you know, being the age I am, I guess, to shout over Zoom. I've noticed that. I always feel like people couldn't possibly hear me at such a distance. So if you don't hear me, please let me know right away, and I'm going to try to modulate my voice a little bit. So I'm really honored and pleased that Joan asked me to spend some time with you and share the Dharma with you. I am currently in Brooklyn, so that's where I'm from. And I've been practicing for 3 years at Brooklyn Zen Center. And I moved here from San Francisco some years back, and have enjoyed acclimating to a new city, Brooklyn, and to a new life here. As Joan said, my background is I trained in Zen at San Francisco Zen Center. I lived about a decade at Green Gulch Farm, but I also trained at Tassajara and at City Center, which is where I met Joan. I was, before that, a yoga teacher for about 20 years. So I still teach yoga. Found it a very helpful practice. I actually turned to yoga when I had a lot of physical difficulties with sitting. I knew, actually from my teenage years, I wanted to practice Zen, but every time I would try to sit, my body would all cramp up and it was just impossible. And I attended a Zen and yoga retreat at Green Gulch at one time and discovered this wonderful gift of yoga. Iyengar yoga was the training I got. And I thought, oh, you know, if I practice this for a while, maybe I can sit. So I gave myself 10 years. I gave myself a decade to see if this yoga was going to work. And it did. It helped me a lot. And then I was able to more fully embark on my Zen path. And before that, and during that time, I was a dancer. So I do have this orientation to body practices, which I was surprised to find out Zen is one. Zen is a body practice. I was under the impression that it was a mental practice. I thought this is going to be all about the mind, and I was interested in that. But what I found out was that it's very much a body practice, and so that's probably infused through anything I teach, whatever it is and what I'll bring to you today. So this past few months, I have been teaching a class on a text. This is a very old text. It's found actually in the Pali Canon, but it's found also in the Mahayana tradition, which Zen is a part of. It's called the Satipatthana Sutta in Pali. I see some recognition of that. And I had been wanting to teach this I actually wanted to study it deeply for a long time. And one of my ways of getting to study something deeply is to actually commit myself to teaching it, and teaching in quotes. I see it more as studying together with others. And I'm willing to do a little extra research work and make some applications based on my practice. And that's what I bring to the mix. But we study the text together. So I just finished that. And I have to say, deeply moved and impressed by this text, and committed now to really consciously taking up this particular teaching, which I'm going to explain to you about. So I saw some nodding about the Satipatthana Sutta. Is that familiar to any of the others of you? If that's a familiar word, aha, yes, that's a great book on it too. Thank you. John, yes. Wonderful. Well, chime in, chime in. So if you have not heard the Pali word, which, you may not have, you probably have heard the word mindfulness. Somebody heard that word? This is a very popular word these days. And a very popular practice, which I hear about a lot too. And so this is, the text is the basis from which all the current mindfulness practices that are out and about in our culture are based on. If you go to the original though, you will find a dimension that has not made it to the popular media too much. So my sense of mindfulness practice as we're currently experiencing it in our culture is paying attention, being in the present moment, but it kind of stops at that. And there are definitely some wonderful benefits to the neuromuscular system if one concentrates one's attention. There's a kind of relaxation. People find that they are free of physical pain. It also can bring some freedom from mental pain. And all of these are bona fide side effects. But this is a teaching that's actually a path. And that's what has inspired me about this teaching is the pathness of it. Shakyamuni Buddha taught this, it is said. And so you're all familiar probably with some aspects of the biography of Gautama Siddhartha or Shakyamuni Buddha. He, a wealthy man who encountered suffering, encountered old age, encountered death, and was disturbed about how to deal with this, had no teaching for this in his life. Heard about sages practicing in the woods, left his family, left his wealth, left his position, went to practice. Studied meditation with a number of teachers and was quite gifted in meditation practice, and but didn't really see how this was going to really change things. He saw a temporary change when you're in samadhi. Things are quite nice, but you can't walk around in samadhi 24/7. So the minute samadhi's over, then the suffering arises again. And so he decided to go further. He went into a severe ascetic practice with some friends. They went to caves, and it was quite severe, basically to the point of death. And this is what I think of as his first enlightenment. He figured out that killing himself was not actually going to do it. It was kind of counterproductive. And so he left the asceticism. And I actually had a wonderful opportunity to visit India a few years ago and go on pilgrimage and actually see the places that all of these events took place. So that was very moving to me. So he came down out of these caves, which if you're in Bodh Gaya, you can see in the distance. And I actually, on a bus, came through that territory to get to Bodh Gaya. Very deserty, barren, mountainous area. And you come down into a lovely valley area, and there's a river running through it and lots of trees, and even more trees when he was around. So he, what always touches me is he encountered this emaciated skeleton of a being, dirty, matted hair, near death. On his way down, he encountered a young woman who was bringing some payasam, which is a kind of a rice pudding that is given to people who are ill. She was bringing it to a sick Brahmin, and she offered it to him because I think she probably figured he was closer to death than the Brahmin was. She could go make some more for the Brahmin, but let's get this guy feeling better. So she gave it to him, and he ate. He ate this very healing food. And then he went and got in the river and washed his body. And he took care of himself. And then he found in the forest near the village where these people live, a big old tree, and sat down under it And one biography I read, which is very wonderful, said, no one ever talks about why he sat under a tree, but actually a lot of mendicants did. They sat under a tree because they would sit near a path that people would walk through under a tree because the tree shaded them and protected them. And also people walking by would give them food. So he sat down under this tree and he entered into his meditation practice, which he had learned quite well. But he remembered from childhood a time when he and his father, he accompanied his father out of the compound that he lived in. And his father was, Gautama means cow. So his father owned a lot of cattle. This was his background. And his father was meeting with, I guess there were also sort of the equivalent of medieval serfs, people who farmed the land. So his father was meeting with them, and the child Buddha went and sat under what's called a rose apple tree and spontaneously became extremely quiet. And it was very pleasant. And I guess he never forgot about that, even though he didn't know what happened. I can relate to that because that's what brought me to Buddhist practice, is I had a very pleasant experience of calmness once that kind of grew on me. And I've heard other stories. I think this is not uncommon, particularly in children, that they will experience this kind of quietness. And it's unexpected, it's a surprise, and people remember it, even though they may not know how to pursue it. So he remembered this sitting under the tree. And the story says that he vowed to sit there until he could see an end to suffering. And we are very fortunate that he did. And after his great enlightenment experience, he continued to sit in that area. And in the temple area in Bodh Gaya, there are different places where, this is where Buddha sat on day 2. This is where Buddha sat on day 3. This is where Buddha did walking meditation. I'm just wondering if any of you have been to Bodh Gaya, by the way. So, so I get the feeling he had planned to just hang out there for the rest of his life, enjoying his new understanding of reality. But he started to get these intimations, they're usually attributed to gods, that he should teach. And his initial thought was, this is too subtle. You know, it's really not verbal. And I don't think I can explain it to anybody so that they'll understand. So he rejected teaching at first on that grounds. And then these godly requests kept coming up. And so he gave way to them. And he began to think, well, who would understand? And he thought of his own teachers, the people he learned meditation from, and he thought maybe they would understand. And then he found out that they had passed away. So then the next consideration was the people he had practiced with, who he had abandoned. He had left his companions up in the caves when he decided that this was not the way. So he thought maybe he would go looking for them, that maybe they would understand. And in fact, he did find them in Varanasi. A place where sages gathered. And at first they didn't want to have anything to do with him because they thought he'd kind of chickened out. But they could see there was something different. This guy, suddenly he looked different. And he gave them teaching. And I think by the end of the 5th day, as one of the suttas say, there were 6 enlightened beings on the planet. So he was able to communicate somehow the teaching. And then he spent the next, he lived till 80. So he spent about the next 50 years teaching. So I say all this to say that this was a very skilled teacher. He was not just an enlightened being, but he was a very skilled teacher. And so to promote this wonderful Satipatthana Sutra. What we have here is the Buddha guiding his disciples in a practice leading to insight. So where we kind of leave off currently with what is, what brings us into the present moment, what is calming, what is relaxing, kind of a sort of mental and physical health. This teaching, the end point of this teaching is really insight or wisdom. And it is all about simplifying. So when I think of simplifying, I think of this woman, Marie Kondo. Have you heard of Marie Kondo, tidying? So she takes you through step by step how to let go of stuff and how to figure out what to hold on to. So this is a little bit like that in a spiritual realm. So the word sati is Pali, and there's a similar word in our Mahayana tradition in Sanskrit called smriti, and it actually literally means to remember. So I find that helpful because mindful has become kind of an abstraction to me. I've heard it so much. But if I think that this is a teaching to remember, and then I have to think, well, what am I supposed to remember? And then there are very specific things to remember. So the first foundation has a number of exercises that teaches us how to remember that we are bodies. And there's a variety of ways to do that, starting very simply with breathing. And then with a sense of various ways of experiencing the body. The second foundation is mindfulness. It's called mindfulness of feeling, but that's not a great word to translate the word Vedana. Vedana is both a Pali and a Sanskrit word. What is meant by that word feeling is not emotion, but a general overall sense of your current experience. And it's very simple. So the body practices of the first foundation are numerous and complex, but they bring you closer and closer to sensory experience as it is in the moment without any elaboration. So this is generally the theme of this, is to gradually pare away all of our stories about everything, starting with our stories about our bodies and moving through to the third foundation, which would be the mind and the mind objects, and the fourth, which goes into the dharmas or the teachings of the Buddha. So I wanted to work a little bit today experientially with the first foundation, but just to give you an example of the use of this, the second foundation is very helpful because it's simple. And I just want to share a story with you because this came up in a conversation. This is Sunday, Friday. So the second foundation, Vedana, mindfulness of feeling or experience, it's very simple. There are only three kinds of experience. The first is pleasant. The second is unpleasant. And the third is neither pleasant or unpleasant. So just for a shortcut, we could say neutral. Okay. That's it. So say you meet somebody and they say, how are you? Well, if you like many of us, you might just say fine because you know they don't want the whole story of how you feel. But if it's actually a person who you think might care about how you feel, most likely you would start to talk about, or I would start to talk about, well, I'm okay. I didn't get enough sleep last night. It's pretty hot. There's a story. That story can be very complex. So this is not that kind of story. This is letting go of all those kinds of stories and just going right back to the experience pleasant, not pleasant because. Then there's no judgments, there's no descriptions, there's just very simple, pleasant. And then there's, of course, unpleasant, and that's the one I can really get going on. It's called complaining. I can complain and complain and complain. It's really fun. I feel terrible because blah, blah, blah. And you can find all the people and events that are responsible, okay? And then that can get directed in all kinds of hostile words or action. I mean, it's endless. It is endless suffering. So, and then neutral, some of us, like once I had an experience in meditation of just this unending neutrality, and the boredom just, it was so painful. It was unpleasant. So anyway, I don't think we get so caught by that. So Friday night I had a student in Brooklyn contact me about wanting to have a conversation with me. And she brought to me an event that had happened that day with a fellow Sangha member. And this event was unpleasant. And so she's been practicing a while, and she did a very good job of describing what happened. It was in the context of a group of people, not just the two of them, but the two of them in a group of people. And it was painful. And she took ownership of her part. And she also brought up what the other person she thought did that was part of the problem. And it was all very good. And then at one point, she began to talk about how the other person had a history. This person had a history of this kind of activity. And because I was sensitive to this teaching, I was like, aha, a history is a story. And in this history, someone is being reified. Someone's faults in the past are being made into a solid story about who this person is. So I got that, and I suggested to her as a practice, after we talked about some, practical considerations for dealing with the situation, I said, try this second foundation of mindfulness. You had an unpleasant experience. And when you go into the history of this person, and they did this before, and they have a problem with this, and I've heard this story, and I've heard that story, then you get into the realm of suffering for yourself and for others. So try just staying with pleasant, or unpleasant in her case. And, I could kind of see through Zoom her kind of stop. She just stopped. There was something in her that stopped. And that's the purpose on every level of this practice, is to take us through what we make stories about as human beings and help us stop. There is in the Chinese Chan tradition, which is our prelude to our Zen tradition, a teaching called stopping and seeing, or cessation and enlightenment. It's another way of saying it. The practice is to stop the discursive thinking, and then one will see. The fruit of stopping is seeing. So this is very connected to Zen, although this text is not usually offered as a Zen teaching. I believe it's foundational to Zazen. And the first foundation of the body, is my experience of Zazen instruction as a beginner was that was it. They didn't tell me it was the first foundation of mindfulness, but they said sit in a certain posture and watch the breath. And if your mind wanders, come back. And don't judge the breath. Don't get into stories about the breath. Or for me as a yoga teacher, don't get into some kind of analysis of the breath. Other than in this text, very simply noticing the breath And the text talks about noticing it as long or short. So you're given a little bit of a hook to hang this wandering mind on. And then that's it. And as you begin to notice the mind wanting to go further, then you come back to this awareness. So this is a kind of a discipline in the best sense of the word. Discipline comes from the word in Latin to teach. So this is a teaching that we give ourselves once we've heard it, that we incorporate, which means to put into the body, and that we can practice. And also the wonderful thing about this teaching is one can practice it sitting on a cushion in the Zendo or on Zoom or wherever, but you can also practice it the rest of your life too, as long as you're awake. So maybe not in sleep, but pretty much any other time, you can take any of the, one teacher calls them exercises, because there are specific practices that are given. You can take any one of those and decide, today I'm going to watch this. And then you have to remember. This word remember comes up. It's the hardest thing. The practices are not hard. It's remembering them that's hard. And it's also not giving into the temptation, because what I've found is I like my discursive thinking. It keeps me entertained. I'm not bored. And many hours on the cushion have taught me that. Like, you know, I can entertain myself for hours just through thinking. So having understood that that's how I entertain myself and how I can become addicted to that particular form of entertainment, I can see the value in this teaching of limiting that. And it doesn't mean you can't ever do it. That capacity will remain forever. One can always entertain oneself with one's mind. But when letting go of that, and letting go of an addiction to that in particular, where that's just the default one jumps to, it allows one to see in the moment what's coming up on the various levels. So I just want to see if there's any other introductory thing I want to say, but I don't. I think that's pretty much it. So we're going to do the practice in a moment, but I'd like to read to you, if that's okay, the beginning of the sutta. And please bring your attention to your posture and to your breath. Relax your mind. These are the words of our great founder, Shakyamuni Buddha. I heard these words of the Buddha one time when he was living at Kamasadama, a market town of the Kuru people. So Buddha lived in cities, basically, or near cities. The Buddha addressed the bhikkhus. Bhikkhus are monks, his followers, and he said, "O bhikkhus." And the bhikkhus replied, "Venerable Lord." The Buddha said, "Bhikkhus, there is a most wonderful way to help living beings realize purification." So what he means by purification is a cleansing of the mind of the hindrances. And this is in the fourth foundation. So a wonderful way to help living beings realize purification, overcome directly grief and sorrow, end pain and anxiety, travel the right path, and realize nirvana. This way is the four foundations of mindfulness. So I'm reading a translation by Thich Nhat Hanh. This is a highly translated text. Almost everybody's translated it. And the word, so I said sati was remembering. Patana or upatana in Pali, it comes from the root word which means to stand. So the foundation that you stand on, the foundation is what you stand on, or the establishment. Where you put your body. I always think of the expression, put my body on the line. So what you're paying attention to is your entire being paying attention. It's not just one part of you, the entire being. So where do you choose to put your attention? Where do you stand in your life? So these are the four, what the Buddha suggests are 4 ways to stand. So what are the 4 foundations? Bhikkhus, this is number 1. A practitioner remains established, standing, in the observation of the body in the body. So this phrase comes up a lot in this text, body in the body. What does that mean, body in the body? That means body without mental elaboration, without stories. Very simply observing. A practitioner remains established in the observation of the body in the body, diligent, with clear understanding, mindful, having abandoned every craving and every distaste for this life. So this is a reference to attraction and aversion and how we are pulled back and forth between wanting things and wanting to get rid of things. So this is an abandonment of that through this practice. And, you know, I don't think you ever stop wanting things or don't wanting things, but I think this is a practice that helps you be free of that. Sometimes what we want is good. Good for us to want that and good for us to get that. We want something to eat because we're hungry. That's good, and we should eat. But to want food when we're not hungry, for instance, might not be so good. That's more like an addiction. So this is, in a sense, saying having abandoned all addiction. So that's foundation number 1. Foundation number 2, they remain established in the observation of feelings in the feelings. So this is this pleasant, unpleasant I was telling you about. Diligent, with clear understanding, mindful, having abandoned every craving and every distaste for this life. So we're run a lot by aversion too, by what we want to get away from. Sometimes we don't really go toward things, we go away from something. So that's the other end of the spectrum. Number 3, they remain established in the observation of the mind in the mind. Diligent, with clear understanding, mindful, having abandoned every craving and distaste for this life. Number 4, they remain established in the observations of the objects of the mind in the objects of the mind. So this word dhammas, or dharmas in Sanskrit, can refer, you know, there's like, if you look in a dictionary, there's a page full of meanings for that word, and it can mean truth, law, objects in a certain school of Buddhism. It also can mean teachings. And so when one looks at what the dharmas are that are observed, they're all teachings actually of the Buddha. So I go more with the sense of teachings. But we are established in their observation, diligent with clear understanding, mindful, having abandoned every craving and every distaste for this life. So now here's the Buddha's words on mindfulness of body, part of it, and then we'll do it. How does a practitioner remain established in the observation of the body in the body? They go to the forest or to the foot of a tree or to an empty room. Sit down cross-legged in the lotus position or whatever position you can sit in. Hold their body upright and establishes mindfulness in front of them. So that comes up a lot in Buddhist teaching. Buddha's often sitting down and establishing mindfulness in front of himself. And I've always thought that's a very interesting expression. What does that mean exactly? And one way of thinking about it, it's mindfulness. What's in front of you is the present moment, generally in sort of casual terms. Look at what's, people say, look at what's right in front of you. That's where you are, not where you're going to be or where you've been. So you establish mindfulness in front of them. They breathe in, aware they are breathing in. They breathe out, aware they are breathing out. Now here you get a little bit of help, something to evaluate. When they breathe in a long breath, they know, I'm breathing in a long breath. So to have full attention on the breath, you can be aware of the breath and be thinking about something else, but to have full attention on the breath allows you to notice whether it's long or short. So I'm breathing in a long breath. When they breathe out a long breath, they know I am breathing out a long breath. When they breathe in a short breath, they know I am breathing in a short breath. When they breathe out a short breath, they know I am breathing out a short breath. Notice it doesn't tell you how to breathe. The Buddha's not saying, well, you should breathe like this. The Buddha's saying, be aware. When you're breathing in this way, notice you're breathing in this way. They use the following practice. Breathing in, I am aware of my whole body. Breathing out, I am aware of my whole body. Breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I calm my body. So this gives a kind of a mantra, which is a very popular teaching technique. And it also gives an intention, which is realizing this calmness. And this particular practice leads to a practice which is called shamatha, or tranquil abiding, which is the basis in pretty much all meditative traditions in Buddhism to meditation. So you establish this calmness of mind, this tranquility, calm abiding by simply watching the breath. So in Zen, we don't give all this terminology. We kind of pare it down. We just say, sit still and watch the breath. The same thing. Now, this is a lovely, next is a lovely metaphor. Are any of you potters? Or done any pottery? This is a beautiful metaphor for potters. Just as a skilled potter knows when they make a long turn of the wheel, I am making a long turn, and knows when they make a short turn, I am making a short turn. The reason I love this is because it relates to all art forms. And as a dancer, my training was becoming aware. If I wanted to do a certain movement, I had to be aware of how the body was doing that movement. I had to pay attention. This is true in music. This is true in athletics. This is true in painting. This is true in every art form. Poets, when I hear them read their poetry, each word is like a full being. So this is an experience available to all humans. Okay, I am making a short turn. So a practitioner, when they breathe in a long breath, knows I am breathing in a long breath. And when they breathe in a short breath, knows I am breathing in a short breath. When they breathe out a long breath, they know I am breathing out a long breath. And when they breathe out a short breath, knows I am breathing out a short breath. So this is a very repetitive text because people did not have it in writing. They had to remember it, part of that memory. So probably by the time you've heard it even once, you'll remember breathing in a short breath. I am aware I'm breathing in a short breath. The text goes on, they use the following practice. Breathing in, I am aware of my whole body. Breathing out, I am aware of my whole body. Breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I calm my body. And then it takes it a little bit further. We're not going to go all the way, but just a little bit further. Moreover, when a practitioner walks, they are aware, I am walking. So I don't know, I love to walk, and I often use walking as time to think about things. It's such a great time to think about things. And I take my walk and I get home and I remember all the things I thought about, but I don't remember the walking. I don't remember it at all. So our Carrigan practice gives us the opportunity to really pay attention to walking. When they are standing, they are aware, I am standing. When they are sitting, I am aware, they are aware, I am sitting. When they are lying down, they are aware, I am lying down. In whatever position their body happens to be, they are aware of the position of their body. So now, as always, I've taken a huge amount of time, but I would like you to have some sense of how you could practice this. So if you would like to, I usually start people lying down, lying on their back, make sure there's something under the head, with the knees bent and the feet on the floor. If you would like to do that, please go ahead. If you feel more comfortable sitting, you are welcome to do that. And you will all disappear from my vision. So, and you won't need to see me, and I actually don't need to see you. So you are hopefully lying down on your back. Your head is supported by some little, it can be a cushion or a folded towel blanket, something to make sure that your head and neck are comfortable. Please put your arms on the ground and turn your palms upward and bring your arms just a little bit away from your body. Please have your knees bent and your feet flat on the floor. And if this, if you need to, you can kind of separate your feet a little bit, turn your toes in and let your knees knock together so they support each other. This is called constructive rest. Once you've settled into the position, notice what is touching the ground. And I usually like to do a scan. There's two ways to go about. One is to scan the body from one part to another, and another is to kind of just get a gestalt of the whole body. So let's do the scan first. And let's start at the highest point, which is the back of the head. And notice the contact of the back of your head with whatever it's touching. Feel it's as though you were reaching out. Don't do anything, but the sense is that your sensory system, part of which is located at the back of your head, is consciously connecting to the ground. Let that be without any activity, more of a way of thinking. Just noticing the head touching the ground. And if you notice that your mind wants to get into analysis, like, well, it's touching it here or touching it there, or you have some judgment about the way your head touches the ground, or it leads you into some other memory, see if you can just let go and bring the mind just into head touching ground, ground touching head. And now move your awareness down and to the next place that touches. So if you have something like a pillow under you, you might feel your neck touching, but if you don't, then the neck may not be touching anything, and that's fine. And then you might need to go to the very upper back, shoulder blade area, and apply the same awareness, same mindfulness. Notice how, or notice that there's a connection between you and the ground at that point. I actually want to stay away from the hows and the whys and the wherefores and just feel it. And then moving down the body, notice the next place that you can be aware of touching the ground. So it might be the spine, the mid-spine, or back ribs. And again, as the mind wants to become more complicated, let's be simple. Ground and body contacting. And then again, moving down. So some people may feel the back of the waist on the ground. Some people may not. If you feel the waist, you can focus there. If you don't, you can go a little lower, the back of the hips. Bring your attention to that sensation. Ground and body meeting at that particular place. And then if you were watching the waist, you can move down to the back of the hips and join the others. Ground and hips, buttocks meeting. Now, if your knees are bent, the next point of contact with the ground, moving from top to bottom, and we skip the arms, so we'll go back there in a minute, is the feet. Our feet are naturally highly sensitized to the ground, to feel the ground. You know, millions of years of evolution, barefoot, feet had to adjust to the ground. And so there's a lot of nerve endings there. Because we wear shoes, we've cut off some of that awareness, but it's still there. The machinery is still there. So now just begin to notice feet on the ground. Ground supporting feet. You can look at one foot and then the other if that is easier, or you can feel both feet simultaneously. Then bring your awareness to your right arm and observe the arm and the ground meeting. What that feels like without description. So you're sensing it, not describing it, but really helpful to notice if you do have a tendency to describe. Nothing wrong with that. Makes for a great writer or a great yoga teacher. But for right now, return to what sometimes is called bare witnessing, meaning the most simple kind of witness. And then bring your attention to the left arm. Noting the contact with the ground. So that's one observation. Another way of observing would be a kind of the gestalt of the whole body, touching the ground, the parts that are touching. So you kind of experience them all at once. And one way that I learned to do that was through the image of lying in sand and visualizing that image of the imprint in the sand of the whole body. And then that helped me then get to the sensation of the whole body touching the ground. So that's a way to approach it. And then I'd like to offer one more awareness, which I find very helpful as a preparation for sitting upright. Notice what it feels like in your whole body, that your head and your torso and your hips are all on the same line and you're not doing anything. The ground is supporting you. If one practices that observation regularly, one can find that alignment again when we sit up and don't have the ground to support us or give us feedback, the sensation of alignment. We do have gravity, and we can work with that. Now I'd like you to bring your attention to the front of the body. And we're going to begin to watch the breath. And again, you can watch the breath in a kind of a sequential way. For some people, this helps to get in touch with the breath. So you can observe the breath, the air as it comes in your nostril. There's a sensation of the air brushing past the tips of the nostrils and coming in the nose and up. And you can even follow it from there. But for right now, just noting that rush of air at the nostrils, in and out. Another place, and this is good for Zazen, is the lower abdomen. This is the part of the abdomen below the navel. And if you wish, you could place your hands there And note as you breathe in, there's a filling up of the belly. And as you breathe out, it empties. And that has a sensation. It has an internal sensation as well as what your hands feel as the belly fills and empties. That's a great place to watch the breath in Zazen because your mudra is there. And this is often emphasized in Zen, in teaching Zazen. One can also watch the breath at the level of the ribs. And the ribs are doing quite a bit of movement as the diaphragm moves down and up as you breathe. So you might become aware, you can even put your hands on your ribs if you wish to, of this movement, this expanding of the rib cage and of this releasing of the rib cage, kind of closing, but it's a released closing as you breathe out. And the last place that I sometimes like to observe the breath, this is helpful when I'm moving around more. It's the upper chest and shoulder area. So there's a subtle movement there, but as you breathe in, there's an expanding and lifting very slightly. And as you breathe out, a dropping and releasing. This is also helpful in relaxing because sometimes we forget to breathe out completely and the shoulders stay up around our ears. Now, just as with the body, one can do a gestalt, which is just a sense of all of this going on as you breathe in and breathe out. One can experience the whole of the sensation of breathing, or one can focus on one small area. What's recommended is for each person to do what's easiest. Always best in this situation to find the concentration point that is most easy. And now we're going to sit up in just a moment. When you sit up, please come up to your meditation posture and take a moment to find your alignment, thinking about what we just experienced, and to find your breath. It's recommended to roll to your side and sit up. That's what we tell yoga students anyway. But however it works for you is fine. But now gradually, please sit up. Continue to be aware of the body and the breath. And take a moment. So the first foundation or establishment lies in finding this foundation of posture and this awareness of breath. From here, one can move into more complicated realms. So I have I apologize. I've done all these no-nos. I've gone a few minutes over. And also I did not allow time for questions. So I'm going to ask Joan if I can invite a question or two, or should we just really come to an end?
Well, let's see. I have a question for you. I
Okay.
privately, and it's a little bit putting you on the spot, but I just, the work is so deep and wonderful, and you're just beginning. I can feel there's so much there. Is everybody feeling that? And it's just so beneficial. So what are you doing Thursday night? This or next?
The next, the I think I have a commitment on Thursday nights, but only for 4 Thursdays, and I think this month has a 5th Thursday. So I believe, I can look at my calendar, but I look at this right before I came on. I thought, oh, I forgot to talk to Joan about this. Let me just quickly check.
This is such a nice, while you're doing that, this is such a nice summer study, right?
Yes.
We're all in our bodies because we're swimming, hopefully, and walking and hiking and, you know, just being outside.
Yes, it is such a wonderful practice for all times. You don't have to, you know, the Buddha says go to a forest or go to a room or whatever. And eventually you probably do have to, but
we got rooms.
So let's see, for July, I believe the Thursday is the 30th. And that Thursday, I have not committed myself. And I don't know if that works for your schedule. It's also possible I could shift what I have the previous Thursday, which is the 23rd.
This coming Thursday or the following are available, open. And so I know that not everybody here might be able to make it. I hope you can. Several of you can, at least. John, I don't know. I don't know if I've ever seen one. Yeah, you come on Thursday sometime. So Shokuchi, it might even be a little bit more time. We have Zazen from 6:30 to 7, and then we do some well-being chanting, and then basically 7:15 to 8:30. And so that's kind of a class format, and that invites questions. So if you're okay, I think this is so delicious. I mean, unless anybody has a burning question, I'm sort of feeling it's a lot of time on Zoom. We've been on Zoom for over 2.5 hours now. Okay, yeah. John.
I see a finger.
I'll avoid the boring Dharma questions and things like that and just hold this up here. Maybe you know this and maybe you don't. This is this book, The Historical Buddha by H.W. Schumann. And, you know, just since you went to Dharamsala and the place where the Buddha is, this is, if you don't know it, this is just this marvelous book about all the geography and the history of where the historical Buddha was. And I just think that having been there, you would just love reading this book.
Thank you so much. I've also heard that, oh, what's her name? Karen, last name. She's written a lot of books on Christianity, but I heard she just wrote a very good Life of the Buddha.
Armstrong.
Armstrong, thank you. But I just want to check this out. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I am thinking, because I'm thinking we end with the Pali refuges, which is our usual practice. And then Shokuchi will work out the details, but it sounds like maybe the 30th, which is not this Thursday, but the following, will continue. So those who are here who can come on that Thursday, keep your questions. And maybe you'll have other questions at that point. Shokuchi, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's lovely to meet you even on Zoom. I just have to share that the one positive about Zoom is I see people's faces in a way that I have never previously seen. So it's been wonderful to see your faces, and I feel like we meet when we see each other's faces. So thank you.
Well, I'm wondering, you know, since everybody mutes and only one person can lead the Pali refuges, Shokuchi, are you up for that?
I'd be happy to.
Wonderful. Okay, so the rest of us will mute and I'll bring them up on the screen, okay?
Buddham saranam gacchami. Dhammam saranam gacchami. Sangam saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi Sangam saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi Sangam saranam gacchami.
Thank you so very much. Thank you, everybody. Oh, please support our guest speaker in the guest speaker series this summer. If you would make a donation for today, we very much appreciate it. Just go back to the home screen, press Zelle if you don't mind, because they don't take any fee. And thank you very much, everybody, for being here. Thank you, Shokuchi, so much. And we'll see you again soon.
Good. Thank you. It's a pleasure. Bye.
Bye.